My uncle tried to toast at my graduation and revealed my adoption secret. The auditorium was a sea of black gowns and proud smiles, but I was sweating bullets under my cap. 4 years of grinding through biology exams, late-night study sessions, and dodging frat parties had led to this, my college graduation. I was 22, the first in my family to get a degree, and the air felt thick with expectation. My parents, aunts, uncles, and cousins filled 2 rows near the front, their cameras flashing like paparazzi. I kept my eyes on the stage, trying to soak in the moment, but my Uncle Jerry, loud, red-faced, and already tipsy from the flask he thought no one noticed, kept catching my attention. He was waving at me like a kid at a parade, and I forced a smile back, praying he'd stay seated. The ceremony dragged on with speeches about shaping the future and seizing opportunities. I zoned out, thinking about the job offer I'd gotten at a lab in Boston. A fresh start, away from our small Ohio town where everyone knew everyone's business. Then the dean called my name, Lila Marie Thompson, and I walked across the stage, diploma in hand, heart pounding. The crowd clapped, my mom cried, and I thought, this is it, I did it. Back at my seat, I was riding the high when the dean announced the reception would follow in the courtyard. That's when Jerry stood up, glass in hand, shouting, "I got something to say!" My stomach dropped. He wasn't on the program. My dad hissed, "Sit down, Jerry." But Jerry was already stumbling toward the microphone, his tie loose, his grin too wide. "Lila Marie," he slurred, grabbing the mic like it was karaoke night. "You're a star, kid, but let me tell you something. Your folks ain't your real folks. You were adopted, sweetheart, found you in a basket, practically, and made you one of us." The auditorium went silent. My ears rang. I looked at my parents. Mom's face was white. Dad's jaw clenched so hard I thought it'd break. My cousins were whispering, staring at me like I was a stranger. Jerry kept rambling, oblivious, but I couldn't hear him anymore. Adopted? Me? I'd grown up with Mom's meatloaf and Dad's bad fishing stories. I had Grandma's eyes. Didn't I? This had to be a drunk joke. But the way Mom was clutching her purse, the way Dad wouldn't meet my eyes, it wasn't a joke. I stood, my chair scraping loud against the floor, and walked out. People parted like I was contagious. Outside, the May air hit my face, but it didn't help. My whole life felt like a lie. Jerry's voice echoed in my head, and I wanted to scream, to shake him, to make him take it back. But deep down, I knew he'd spilled something real, something my parents had hidden for 22 years. Why didn't they tell me? What else didn't I know? I leaned against a tree, my diploma still in my hand, and tried to breathe. The courtyard was filling with families, laughter, champagne toasts. My family was still inside, probably scrambling to fix Jerry's mess. I didn't want to see them. Not yet. I needed answers, but I didn't even know where to start. I stayed outside until the courtyard crowd thinned, my diploma crumpled in my fist. The shock was fading, replaced by a gnawing anger that burned in my chest. How could my parents keep this from me? I wasn't a kid anymore. I deserved the truth. My phone buzzed with texts from Mom. "Lila, come back inside. We need to talk. Please, honey." I ignored them. The thought of facing her teary eyes or Dad's gruff apologies made me want to bolt to Boston and never look back. I ended up at a diner across town, the kind with sticky tables and waitresses who call you sugar. I ordered coffee I didn't drink and sat there, replaying Jerry's words. Adopted. Found in a basket. The phrase felt like a bad movie line, but it was my life now. I kept thinking about little things. Mom's obsession with my baby photos, how she'd always say I was her miracle. Was that code for not really hers? And Dad, who'd taught me to ride a bike and cheered at my soccer games? Did he see me as someone else's kid? The questions piled up, and I felt like I was drowning in them. Socially, I was a mess. My cousin Tara posted a vague family drama status online, and I knew the town's gossip mill was already churning. By tomorrow, every neighbor would be whispering about poor Lila, the adopted one. I'd spent years trying to stand out in a place where people rarely left, and now I was the center of attention for all the wrong reasons. My phone lit up with notifications friends from school, distant relatives, even my high school ex. Heard what happened. You okay? I turned it off. I didn't want pity. I wanted answers. The worst part was the betrayal. My parents weren't just my anchors, they were my identity. Every fight, every holiday, every time I'd rolled my eyes at mom's nagging, I thought I knew who we were. Now, I didn't even know who I was. I kept picturing their faces in the auditorium, guilty, caught. They'd had 22 years to tell me, and they chose silence. That hurt more than Jerry's drunken outburst. I wondered if they'd ever planned to tell me, or if they thought I'd just live in their lie forever. At the diner, I scribbled questions on a napkin. Who are my birth parents? Why was I given up? Did Jerry know more? My hands shook as I wrote. And I realized I was terrified of the answers. What if my birth parents were dead, or didn't want me? What if I'd been abandoned for some awful reason? The uncertainty was suffocating, but so was the idea of staying in the dark. I paid for the coffee and left, my resolve hardening. I wasn't going to let this destroy me. I'd find the truth, no matter how ugly it was. Back at my apartment, I couldn't sleep. The questions on that diner napkin were burning a hole in my brain, so I started digging. My parents had called a dozen times, but I wasn't ready to hear their excuses. I needed facts, not feelings. I grabbed my laptop and searched for adoption records in Ohio. The process was a maze. Sealed files, court orders, private agencies. Most sites said I'd need my birth certificate, which I'd never thought to question. I rummaged through my desk for it, hands shaking, and found it in a folder of old papers. There it was, Lila Marie Thompson, born May 15, 2003, to Margaret and Daniel Thompson. No mention of adoption. Was it fake, or just part of the cover-up? I needed more than Google. The next morning, I drove to the county courthouse, a squat brick building that smelled like dust and coffee. The clerk, a woman with glasses on a chain, looked at me like I was wasting her time. "Adoption records are sealed," she said, barely glancing up. "You'd need a court order, and good luck with that." I pressed her about private adoptions, agencies, anything. She shrugged. "Try the state registry. Costs $50 to get on the list, no guarantees." I left with a pamphlet and a headache, feeling like I'd hit a wall. Jerry was my next lead. He'd blurted the truth, so he had to know something. I tracked him down at his auto shop, where he was tinkering with a carburetor, still reeking of last night's whiskey. "Lila, kid, I'm sorry," he started. But I cut him off. "Who told you I was adopted? What do you know?" He fidgeted, wiping grease on his jeans. "Your mom let it slip years ago. After a fight, said you were from some agency in Cleveland. That's all I got. Swear." Cleveland, a lead. But his shifty eyes made me wonder if he was holding back. I left him to his tools, my mind racing. Back home, I called every adoption agency in Cleveland listed online. Most were dead ends, closed, merged, or unwilling to talk without paperwork I didn't have. One, Hope Haven, had a receptionist who sounded sympathetic. "We can't release records," she said. "But if you send your info, we might match you with a birth parent if they're registered." I mailed a form that afternoon, my heart pounding as I dropped it in the box. It felt like a shot in the dark, but it was something. Every step felt like pulling teeth, and the waiting was torture. I kept imagining my birth parents. Were they teenagers who couldn't cope? Addicts? Or just people who didn't want me? The not knowing was worse than the truth could be. I stopped checking my phone. The pity texts had dried up, but so had my patience for small talk. My life was on hold. Boston could wait. I needed to know who I was before I could move forward. Weeks passed, and the waiting gnawed at me. Hope Haven finally called. The receptionist's voice was cautious, like she was reading from a script. "We have a match," she said. "Your birth mother registered last year. She's willing to meet." My heart slammed against my ribs. I scribbled down the details. Sarah Bennett, 38, living in Akron, an hour's drive away. A meeting was set for Saturday at a coffee shop. No mention of a father. I hung up, staring at the name. Sarah Bennett? Who was she? Why did she give me up? Saturday came, and I drove to Akron, my stomach in knots. The coffee shop was quiet, all wooden tables and soft jazz. I spotted her instantly. Same dark hair, same sharp jawline I saw in the mirror every day. She stood when I walked in, her hands twisting a napkin. "Leela?" she said, voice shaky. I nodded, and we sat, awkward as strangers. She looked tired, like life had worn her down, but her eyes were locked on me, searching. She didn't waste time. "I was 16, Taj," she said. "Pregnant, scared, living with my mom, who threw me out when she found out. Your father, his name was Michael, he was older, a drifter. He left before you were born." She paused, sipping her coffee. "I wanted to keep you, but I had nothing, no money, no home. The agency promised you'd go to a good family. I signed the papers and tried to move on. I listened, my throat tight. She'd been a kid, younger than I was now, forced to choose between bad and worse. But the anger I'd carried for weeks didn't vanish, it shifted. Why hadn't she looked for me sooner? Why register only last year? I asked, and she flinched. I was ashamed, she said. I thought you'd hate me. But I got sober, got my life together, and I couldn't stop wondering about you. We talked for hours. She'd never had other kids, worked as a nurse now, lived on. Michael, my father, was a ghost, last she heard. He'd died in a car wreck years ago. The agency had been her only option, she said. And she'd prayed I'd find parents like mine. That stung. My parents, the Thompsons, had lied to me. But they'd raised me, loved me. Sarah was a stranger. Yet she was part of me. I didn't know how to feel. Driving home, I realized the truth wasn't a tidy answer. It was a mess. My parents' silence still hurt, but I saw why they'd kept it quiet. Fear I'd feel less theirs. Sarah's choice wasn't abandonment, it was survival. But knowing didn't fix the fracture in my identity. I wasn't just Lila Thompson anymore, but I wasn't Sarah's daughter either. I was stuck in between, and it felt like quicksand. So, YouTube viewer, I'm lost. Do I confront my parents and demand why they hid this? Do I keep seeing Sarah, try to build something, or do I walk away from both and start over in Boston? What would you do?